Everyone knows there are time-proven structures to sharing an idea, telling stories. So why start from a blank page when you can use these presentation frameworks that are designed to make you more effective, more persuasive, even more entertaining? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Vicky, and I'm compiling the best frameworks for clear thinking and clear communications. And today we're talking about presentation frameworks. First, the overarching framework, one that's going to make everything else to come easier, and one I wish people told me earlier, is the information entertainment scale. This helps us find a clear purpose to why we're doing the presentation, why we're communicating in the first place. Purely informative presentations are things like the news, or teaching for the sake of teaching. That's very dry and boring. Or most management consulting presentations, which I've done quite a few of. On the other extreme, there are pure entertaining presentations. Things like stand-up comedy all the way to kindergarten show and tell. And what you want to do is first decide how you want to position your presentation. TED Talks are a great example. There are some that are purely informative.
Today, the greatest risk of global catastrophe doesn't look like this. Instead, it looks like this.
Some are very entertaining.
You know, when Chris first approached me to speak at TED, I said no, because I felt like I wasn't going to be able to make that personal connection, that I wanted to at such a large conference. But he explained to me that he was in a bind and that he was having trouble finding the kind of sex appeal and star power that the conference was known for. So I said, fine, TED.
And many try to find a balance with edutainment.
I'm a professional troublemaker. As my job is to critique the world, the shoddy systems, and the people who refuse to do better. As a writer, as a speaker, as a shady Nigerian, I feel like my purpose is to be this cat.
So the question then becomes, how do you know where you should position your presentation? This depends on two things: you and your audience. For example, in management consulting presentations, it's about sharing recommendations to busy company executives. The executives want to get to the point ASAP. They want to know, what do we need to do next to usually make more money? And why should we do that? What is the evidence? I want to understand that. And as consultants, you want to give them exactly what they're looking for, because one, you want to minimize the amount of work that you have to do in follow-ups, and two, you want to do a good job, impress them so they'll come back to you for future work. And I'll give you the exact framework for the situation where you want to be informative, but first let's look at when you and your audience want something different. Let's say your audience are students and you are here to teach the students something. You might want to make sure your talk is as informative as possible so they learn as much as they can, but let's be honest, for most students, they want to be entertained. They don't really care if you're just standing there giving them facts and figures. In this case, if you really want them to take something away from your talk, you better mix up the entertaining with the information. And luckily, there is also a framework for that, so we'll cover this in one moment. Now let's talk about the last part where both you and your audience want the presentation to be entertaining. Disclaimer, I'm not a classically trained entertainer, but I am fascinated with what makes people laugh. And so I'll point you to the frameworks that comedians use when they set up jokes at the very end. So if you need to do a funny wedding toast or a Christmas skit at work, you can use these frameworks to get you started. With that, let's get to the presentation frameworks. Number one, for informative presentations, use the pyramid principle. This is the fundamental structure for sharing information in an easy to digest and answer first way. Here's what it looks like. We have the conclusion at the very top of the pyramid. This is answer first. Then we share the three supporting arguments in case your audience isn't really convinced. And if they're really picky, you'll have three pieces of evidence for each of the three supporting arguments. Notice how this is the opposite of the research process, right? Usually we gather a lot of data, and from those we try to discern what key points there are, and from those key points we come up with the conclusion. And most people end up explaining their ideas this way, which does not make it effective for the reason that you're not framing the talk. Without giving an end goal for your audience to focus on, it's very easy for them to get distracted, right? With tangents, with details that are not really important to what you're trying to get across. And so, as I've talked about it in this other video as well, as the presenter, you want to steer, not follow, right? You want to set the flow for your presentation, especially if it's purely informative and you have a point you want to make. And the pyramid principle is set up in this way so that in your informative presentation, you can set the goal and then address questions preemptively so people follow your logic and see why your point makes sense. Now, the second framework for when you want to mix entertainment with information is the curiosity gap. This is how you set up your presentation so that people can't help but pay attention to your presentation. The most crucial part of the curiosity gap is in the beginning, where you want to do three things. One, tell the audience what this is about. Two, tell the audience why it's relevant to them. And three, what they'll get out of this presentation. And you want to do all three things all at the same time without giving away your answer. This is the main difference between being completely informative to mixing in entertainment. You don't want to reveal the answer. In essence, to inject entertainment, it depends on when you're revealing key information. Take this video as an example. I didn't at the very beginning say,
here are 3 presentation frameworks you should use, and this is a boring description of all of them.
right? Because you'd be bored out of your mind. This is not what you came to YouTube to do. YouTube is a classic platform for edutainment. It's very similar in TED Talks. They usually open something like this.
Okay, now I don't want to alarm anybody in this room, but it's just come to my attention that the person to your right is a liar. Also, the person to your left is a liar. Also, the person sitting in your very seats is a liar. We're all liars. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you what the research says about why we're all liars, how you can become a lie spotter, and why you might want to go the extra mile and go from lie spotting to truth seeking, and ultimately to trust building.
I'll leave a link to that TED Talk in the description, but before you go, I want to talk about how do you structure the rest of your presentation when you're mixing entertainment with information, and that is use an adapted version of the pyramid principle. You still want 3 main points that you want to get across, but for your evidence, you can work in analogies and stories to make it more entertaining. This way, there's still enough structure in your presentation so that people can retain the information. And you actually make it more memorable, easier to recall with stories and analogies. Now, this brings us to the third framework, which is the rate of revelation when you want to make your presentation entertaining. In a nutshell, the rate of revelation is how fast you reveal key information. We've alluded to this in framework number 2, right? Where the key information and when you reveal it is what injects entertainment into your presentation. Here's an example of Margaret Atwood giving you a very fast rate of revelation in telling a made-up story.
John and Mary are living in their split-level bungalow. Then John discovers that Mary is mysteriously absent during parts of the night and has developed an alarming tendency to sleep in the bathtub with all the curtains drawn. What has happened? What are those strange white fangs that have appeared? Could it be that Mary is a vampire? Yes! What is John going to do? And what about the children? Have they inherited this tendency or not?
A slow rate of revelation sounds something like,
I woke up, I brushed my teeth, I washed my face, and then I had breakfast. There was orange juice and eggs on the table, but I wanted to have some milk. So I went to the fridge, I got the milk out, I came back to the desk, and I checked on my phone. And that's when I realized, oh crap. It's daylight saving and I'm late.
And the key here is to think about your presentation in terms of these key information and how you're going to tie one to the other and how fast you'll go from each one. As you vary the speed, as you give just enough for people to want to know more, you've captured their attention and you've created an entertaining presentation. If you found these 3 frameworks helpful, make sure you give this video a like, subscribe if you haven't already, it really helps with this channel. I'll leave up a few other frameworks that you can explore and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!